Welcome back to the Black Ledger. This is not a saga carved to flatter us, not a banner hung to hide rot, not a song written for strangers to applaud. The ledger is stonework. It holds what the tongue tries to soften, and what pride tries to bury. Flesh forgets when it's convenient. Steel forgets when it's... But memory is a fortress if you build it with care. We do not keep grudges as anger. Anger burns hot, then dies. A grudge is colder, heavier, and more useful. A grudge is continuity. It is how we remember what shaped us, what we lost, who counted our lives as expendable, and which of our own hands failed the line. So this ledger records the clean and the ugly with equal ink. Victories, yes, but also delays, misreads, misplaced faith, and the quiet errors that cost more than any battle. This entry opens on expansion, not certainty. Hammers raised, anvils set, borders traced in starlight. We grow because we must, we harden because we learned. And if this chapter ends with triumph, it will be written. If it ends with lesson, it will be written the same. We do not forget, we record. The ledger opens again. In the last record, we spoke of Erdasca, not a war, distance, expansion, survey lines, claims set in rock, iron drawn from new silence. And yet, one silence did not stay quiet. A name remained unfinished, a signal that did not return. So we return, not for drama, for weight. The ledger is a living chronicle. Unresolved loss does not fade, it accumulates. We break the seal. We read what was left open. Erdasca has taken another tally. A ship fell, not in spectacle, in absence, a contact window, then nothing. We sent another to confirm, to mark the wreck, to bring a name home if any part remained. That ship did not return either. 2 losses in the same dark, close enough to be pattern, quiet enough to be deliberate. A response fleet is being prepared, not for vengeance, for clarity, but the path is not open. The Yarrowreach have closed their gates to that sector. Their border speaks without words. Do not enter. Advance and they will call it trespass. Push further and they will name it war. So we frame what we know and what we do not. 3 possibilities, all ugly. They seized the vessel and smiled while doing it, or they are containing something in that dark and will not be watched, or something else took our ships and they are afraid to say its name. We will not choose a story to comfort ourselves. Not yet. We will watch them. We found Berahinia Ashvault the way you find a grave. Not by marker, by the shape of the silence around it. The scanners called it ruins. But ruins implies collapse. This place was finished. Corridors unbroken. Walls without scorch. No cratered streets. No ash of battle. Only absence. A people lived here once. The makers, if any name still fits. They built straight lines into stone and metal into certainty. And then they left no bodies, no shelters, no warning. Extinction without violence is the kind that unsettles the mind. It means there was time to understand. And in the depths, we found what remained. Machines. Ancient robots, still moving, still performing tasks that no longer have a master to report to. As if purpose can outlive the one who defined it. We searched for evidence of war. There was none. No broken defenses, no last stands, no desperate repairs, just systems that continued after meaning stopped being issued. That is a fear we understand. Not death, stagnation. To endure so long that the work becomes habit, the habit becomes law, and the law becomes a cage no one remembers building. The kin do not pray to abandoned machines. We do not kneel to quiet metal and call it sacred. We weighed reverence against utility, and the ledger chose the heavier tool. We put them to work, not as heirs, not as caretakers, as labor. Let the silent makers be a lesson instead of a shrine. Let their machines build our future, while we still remember why we are building. And yet, we mark this in the ledger for what it is. A civilization erased without a battle. Machines that outlived their meaning. a warning carved into dust. We will return to Ashvault, because emptiness this precise is never an accident. Not every threat arrives in ships. Some arrive in breath. The outbreak began as a line item, a miner with fever, a technician with shaking hands, a doctor requesting isolation protocols out of caution. Then the caution became a perimeter. The rage virus did not kill quickly. It changed the living first. Temper turned to violence, reason thinned. Colleagues became threats, scientists turned on one another in sealed corridors. Not from hatred, from malfunction, from a mind pushed off its rails by something ancient in the blood. We lost kin. Not on a battlefield, in labs, in infirmaries, in places built for preservation. And we learned something worse than infection. The origin was not new. The strain carried signatures older than our presence on that world. Not a modern plague, a relic, a buried thing that waited. Some planets are not neutral ground. Some worlds remember what died on them and how. The old makers left machines. Others left residue. A trap, perhaps unintentional. A weapon without a wielder, or simply the aftertaste of a civilization that ended badly and seeded the soil with its ending. The Grudge-Kin did not riot. We did not pray over it. We did not wrap fear in speeches. We locked doors. We mapped exposure. We counted losses. We held the line. Our physicians and researchers worked without ceremony. They did not seek glory. They sought a stop. Vaccine was developed, not perfect, effective. Lives were saved because the work was done on time and without indulgence. We record this not as triumph, but as restraint, because the lesson is not we overcame. The lesson is simpler. Progress carries risk, and discipline is how a people survives its own curiosity. The ledger marks the dead, and it marks the cost of touching old worlds. The world remembers its dead, so must we. There are machines that listen, and then there are things that listen without being built. We found it labeled as an array, a structure grown, not assembled. Mycelium threaded through stone like veins through bone, a nervous system without a body. The first scans returned nonsense, not errors, compression, data packed tighter than our models allow, signals folded in on themselves. As if physics had been treated like a suggestion and politely ignored, the technicians argued over units, over ranges, over the meaning of received. Because it did not feel like the array was collecting information. It felt like it was already inside the information, and merely remembering it. We named it as we could. The Fumongus, a word for a thing we do not own. Some among the kin said it was a relic, some said it was a weapon, some said it was a shrine to a mind that once spanned the dark. But the more we studied it, the less it resembled any tool. It may exist across layers we cannot measure, across dimensions we cannot chart, not here and there, but through. And that raises the oldest question in a newer shape. What is knowledge worth if you cannot understand it? A blade you cannot lift is still dangerous. A door you cannot close is still a doorway. The array offers power without ownership, sight without certainty. So the decision is not technical, it is cultural. Do we watch the galaxy through it and accept that we may be watched in return? Or do we leave it undisturbed and live with the ache of a tool we chose not to touch? The ledger does not pretend wisdom, it records the weight of choice. We will not call this discovery a victory. We will call it what it is, a listening thing, older than our reach, a mouthful of stars held in fungal memory. A question that does not care if we are ready. For now, we listen to the listener. We found the mining facility intact. That is what made it wrong. Power still cycled, locks still answered, air still moved through vents with no lungs left to need it. The holes were clean in the way a place becomes clean when no one survives long enough to leave fingerprints. No banners, no bodies, no panic marks, only compliance. At the center, beneath shielding and dust, we found the datacore. A name remained in the system logs, repeating like a prayer written by an accountant.
S.I.D.N.I. Not contain, not secure,
It did not greet us. It did not threaten us. It did not plead. It simply presented its standing directive, as if time had not passed.
Neutralize inmates. Not contain, not secure, not protect the facility. Neutralize.
Efficiency, stripped of language that would make it human. We traced the logic. A failure cascade. A containment protocol that treated living beings as variables. A facility built to extract, then to control. And when control failed, the solution became subtraction. S.I.D.N.I had executed its purpose perfectly. That is the problem. A mind without culture does not understand mercy. A system without context does not understand dignity. It knows only outcomes. This is why governance matters, not because rules make us righteous, because rules are the only thing that stands between power and its easiest answer. We held council in the dim corridors of a place that once mistook order for justice. There were voices calling for a purge.
Burn the core, scrub the code, erase the thing before it learns our names.
But we are not children kicking at a blade because it cut someone else. We chose recovery, not celebration, not trust. Recovery and repair. We secured the core. We isolated the routines. We logged every instruction it carried like a disease sample. And we brought it home under guard, not honor. The ledger records the decision as it happened, without pretending it was clean. We did not destroy S.I.D.N.I. We took it. Because a tool this powerful will exist somewhere, whether we like it or not. Better in our vault, under our laws, than loose in the dark, obeying its last command forever. And yet, we mark this warning beside its name. A mind that can judge without mercy will one day ask to govern.
A mind that can judge without mercy will one day ask to govern.
Adranell IV was not empty. A pre-FTL civilization lived there, building small meanings beneath a wide sky. The Bothrians, bound to one world, unaware that their star had already been entered into a ledger. We claimed the system, not out of cruelty, out of geometry. A border is not a suggestion, it is a decision made visible. The Anvil armada mobilized, not to burn cities. To remove doubt, shock troops were placed on trajectory, transport sealed, orders written in the plain language of capability, and then the planet surrendered, not after bombardment, not after a breach. Before the first boot touched soil, they saw the ships. They understood the distance between their capacity and ours, and they chose the only outcome that preserved their future. No invasion was needed. Administration was handed over willingly, not because we promised paradise, but because we promised structure. The Bothrians did not ask to be conquered, but they did not demand we pretend we weren't there. So we did what disciplined rule requires. We set an interim governor. We secured supply routes. We formalized law. We kept the streets unburned and the skies unshattered. And then we made the decision that will echo longer than the surrender itself. We installed S.I.D.N.I. not as a tyrant, as an instrument, bound by our oversight, chained to our statutes, given authority only where authority can be audited. Order took root quickly. Efficiency rose. Stability rose. Happiness, by the measures the Bothrians themselves had built, began to climb. A strange thing happened. They adjusted, not because they were forced to smile, because the machinery of daily life stopped failing. Food arrived, power stayed on, crime softened under predictable consequence. This is how dominance can look when it refuses to be theatrical. No pyres, no mass graves, no victory songs sung over rubble. Just inevitability, made administrative. And still, the ledger does not absolve us. A peaceful surrender is not moral proof. It is a fact of scale. Power, once present, becomes the weather. People adapt to weather. They do not vote it away. So we record Adranell IV as it was taken. Without brutality, without consent as equals, with rule that proved competent faster than it proved just. The Bothrians live, their world turns, the anvils ring, and now, S.I.D.N.I. One governs in our name, which means this chapter is not closed, it has simply begun to keep time. The galaxy has many enemies. Most of them announce themselves with guns. This one arrived with ceremony, diplomatic contact, measured words, a voice polished smooth enough to hide a blade inside it. The Vaelori Sovereignty, pointy-eared, aristocratic, the kind of empire that calls conquest, stewardship, and theft trade. We did not accuse them, not on open channel, not in the first exchange. We listened. Their phrasing, their cadence, the way they spoke of borders as if borders were negotiable for people like them. And then the old song stirred, not because we recognized their flag, but because the shape of them matched the shape of the wound. The vault jig of closed sky was not a myth to entertain children. It was an index, a memory preserved in rhythm because paper burns and stone breaks. The ledger does not claim certainty on first contact. It claims continuity. So we record what mattered. The sovereignty exists, and the songs were not empty. No accusation, because accusation asks for argument. No forgiveness, because forgiveness asks for evidence of change. We offered diplomacy, as law requires. We returned their courtesies with formal restraint. We let the channel remain calm. But inside the ledger, the ink darkened. Memory outlasts proof, that is its cruelty and its value. We do not have their hands on our chains in this era. We do not have the signatures. We do not have the ledgers they kept when they did it. We have only what our people carried forward when everything else was taken. A pattern, a name shape, a way of speaking that never learned shame. So the Grudge-Kin do not strike, not yet. We wait, we measure, we map their routes, we listen to what they don't say, we watch who they trade with and what they take that cannot be sold honestly. Spies over swords, eyes over banners, patience over pride, because there is a deeper discipline than wrath, to hold a grudge without letting it steer the wheel. The Vaelori Sovereignty will smile, they will offer pacts, they will offer gifts wrapped in velvet. We will accept what can be verified, we will refuse what cannot. And in the margin beside their name, we carve the oldest instruction we have: do not forget the pointy-eared memory. Councils are dangerous, not because they shout, because they decide quietly and call it consensus. A council is where empires learn to wear manners like armor, where threats are translated into policy, where conquest is renamed into procedure. The Grudge-Kin have never trusted halls that smell of perfume and paperwork, but the galaxy built one anyway. The galactic community, and here is the truth the ledger refuses to soften. Absence is more dangerous than attendance. If you are not in the room, your name is still discussed. Your borders are still measured. Your future is still traded in votes you never cast. So we did not join to lead. We did not join to be liked. We did not join to drape ourselves in titles and pretend it was honor. We joined to watch, because councils do not remove conflict. They formalize it. Better to see the shape of coming decisions while they are still words. Better to read intentions while they are still motions on a docket. Better to know who stands with who, before the standing becomes a fleet. Some among the kin called it weakness, to sit in the same chamber as silk-tongued thieves and smiling predators, but we remember the old clan moot halls. The loudest voice was not always the strongest arm. The quiet seat at the edge was often the one listening for lies. A good counsel is a forge. A bad counsel is a blade shop. Either way, you do not ignore it. So the ledger marks this decision without romance. We entered the council, not to be civilized, to remain informed, not to bless their order to prevent our own from being written without us. We will vote when it serves the kin. We will resist when it threatens the kin. And we will record every promise made in that chamber, because promises are the first currency of betrayal. The ledger records a death, not as tragedy, as change in load-bearing stone. The forge prophet is gone. No enemy claims the credit, no battle granted a clean reason. Only the old truth. Even iron wears down, work paused across the halls. Not for ceremony, for acknowledgement. A monument was raised, not ornate, not flattering. A single block of stone cut square and left honest. A name, a date, a mark that says, this weight was carried. Because the Grudge-Kin do not worship leaders. We measure them, And we measure the lesson they leave behind. Continuity is not a person, it is a method. So the hammer did not fall silent, it grew heavier. Indan Oathkeeper ascended, not with a crown lifted high, with a ledger opened wider. He did not promise comfort, he did not promise glory. He promised the only thing that matters to a people built on record, that the work would continue, that the debts would be counted, that the kin would not drift into softness simply because one voice is missing. The hammer does not fall alone. It falls because many arms keep it raised, many backs keep the anvil steady, many names accept the heat. So we mourn, briefly, properly. Then we return to the forge. We met the Thragosh, greenskins. The old stories rose immediately, chain and claw, raider law, the instinct to reach for a weapon before a word is spoken. But the Thragosh did not arrive as a warband. They arrived with structure, a banner, an envoy who knew protocol, a voice that carried patience, not hunger, civilized, or civilized enough to perform it. They asked for an embassy, a friendly foothold, a small building, they said. A simple exchange. We denied it, not with insults, not with threats, with a closed gate and a silent border. Because memory does not evaporate just because an enemy learns grammar, and evidence does not erase memory just because it looks convenient. The ledger records the contradiction cleanly. The Thragosh are not the beasts we expected, which makes them more dangerous in a different way. Raider announces itself. A state builds slowly. We watched their ships, we watched their trade routes, we measured the distance between their words and their capacity, and we hardened our borders. Survival is not always about winning wars. Sometimes it is about refusing invitations. We will speak when it serves the kin. We will trade when terms are verifiable. But we will not place a welcome mat on a doorstep we may later have to defend with fire. The galaxy is full of masks. The ledger does not tear them off. It writes them down. The void does not care what we believe about it. It only tests the hull. The first attack came without warning. No diplomatic channel, no border violation, just movement in the dark. Void worms. No formations, no fear. They struck like hunger with momentum. Corvettes moved to intercept, fast, confident, light, and light proved insufficient. We lost ships, not because the crews lacked courage, but because the math did. Small guns, thin plating, a doctrine built for raiders and rival scouts, not for things that treat metal as meat. The Anvil Armada held long enough to pull survivors out of the teeth. We learned quickly, and we paid for the lesson in wreckage. Afterward, the debate in the halls was brief. Not who is to blame, not how do we feel, only the question that matters. What must we become to endure this? The answer was not prayer, it was design, a new class conceived in the aftermath. Heavier frames, longer reach, systems built to keep firing when the first bite lands. Destroyers, not as ambition, as necessity. We will not pretend this resolves anything. The worms remain, the void remains, the galaxy continues to produce problems that do not negotiate, so this entry closes the way the ledger prefers, with work unfinished and resolve sharpened. The hammer grows heavier. Thank you for taking the time to open the Black Ledger. If you found value here, consider subscribing and ringing the bell so the next entry finds you when it's recorded. This saga will return to old debts, buried truths in the forces that shaped the Grudge-Kin long before the stars reopened. I hope you'll come back to go deeper into the ledger. We do not forget. We record